session of the Open 17 Challenge. So my role today is for about 15 minutes to tell you about the challenge and how it's built up and what we hoping you will gain from participating in this challenge and what we're looking from you in exchange in terms of what you're going to produce by the end of the challenge. First, a word about the project Crowd4SDG, which is supporting this challenge. So when we talk about crowds, we can mean different things. But recently, I think the whole world is aware that there is a major climate crisis and many other issues that are affecting our planet, such as pollution and issues related to gender equality. And many people are protesting about this. But a lot of young people in particular would like to do something about this, would like to change the world. And what the Open 17 Challenge is all about is helping you to become a change maker, to make some difference through a project that you're going to work on over the next 5 weeks. So we talk about crowds and crowdsourcing. We also will talk to you a lot about citizen science over the next 5 weeks. It's very much a theme of this challenge. And citizen science is really the using crowds and groups of young people, for example, to gather useful data for tracking environmental damage or other issues that people are concerned about. So here you see some people measuring water quality or mapping forests. Citizen science happens all over the world. And we're going to be introducing you to tools, crowdsourcing tools for citizen science to help you achieve your project goals. And of course, Crowd4SDG contains the word SDG, so the abbreviation, Sustainable Development Goal. Hopefully you've all heard of it by now. But just to remind you, there are 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The United Nations launched this framework in 2015 with the goal 15 years later in 2030 of achieving a whole range of targets that have been set for each one of these very important goals. Now, for the SDGs, for the Crowd4SDG project, the mission of the project is really to see to explore and to assess to what extent crowdsourcing can contribute to progress towards the SDGs. How can we measure data that allows people, governments, which could be national or local, to actually see if we are achieving progress towards sustainable development? And the other important mission is to generate grassroots innovation, ideas from people like you becoming the sort of change that will enable us to reach such goals. So why Open 17? Well, because behind what we're doing now for the last 5 years, since the SDGs were launched, is looking at how people like you, citizens around the world, can gather open data, data that's accessible to anyone, for the 17 SDGs, hence the Open 17. And just to remind you here, here's one of the goals, SDG number 3. And what you need to know is that for each goal, there are many targets. In total, for all the SDGs, 169 targets. And for each target, there are several indicators. And these are sometimes quantitative measures of how countries or regions or cities are making progress. And there's over 200 of these indicators at the moment. So why are we telling you about this? Well, the Open 17 Challenge, which we launched last year with Crowd4SDG, is really focusing on gathering data about climate action. So our focus last year and this year and next year is really closely related to the upcoming COP meeting, COP26, where we're looking for ways that people around the world can gather data towards climate resilience issues, climate action that communities can actually undertake. So last year, we looked at the issue of urban water resilience, and we had a lot of fantastic ideas and energetic participants joining the Open 17 Challenge last year. And I want to tell you about just one of them, because she can be a role model to some of you, I hope. So the example is Dia Vadia. So when she joined us, and she's still a high school student, 16 years old now, and she led a team in the Crowd4SDG Open 17 Challenge, and her project was about monitoring floods. So she called the project Flood Finder, and the idea was that there's a lot of data about floods being recorded automatically in some cities by video systems that are monitoring traffic. These so-called CCTV cameras will be recording all the time. And so when there's a flood, there's a lot of data that could be processed and understood to help people respond to the flood more quickly and more accurately. So she worked on this project with us, and she managed to really think through how this project could achieve the change she wanted to achieve. And thanks to that, she and her team were able to, first of all, to prepare and get accepted a poster at an international conference on disaster response, a very famous conference. And as far as we know, it's the first time that a 16-year-old without a university affiliation gets accepted in such a prestigious event. But she also, with her team, won a competition thanks to the pitch that she prepared about her project. And so her project is now being developed in a social incubator run by a group called Code for America. So Dia is just one of many examples from the Open 17 Challenge. And what we want to help you with is to turn your dreams, your ideas into projects like this that can lead to impact. So here in 2021, we launched a challenge which focused not only on climate change and climate resilience, but also issues of gender equality. Really, these two issues are very closely linked. I think many of you have understood that. That's why we selected your projects. And so thank you for coming up with so many ideas. And many thanks to our partners at Goodwall. Goodwall, the platform where you posted your pitches, which is full of really bright young people with great ideas to change the world. So that's why we're collaborating with them. But the other reason we collaborate with Goodwall is, you might want to know, is they're actually just upstairs here in the same building as us in the heart of Geneva, Switzerland. So I just want to say a few words about the methodology here. And what I mean here is that actually the Open 17 Challenge that you're participating in now is just one part of a wider innovation process that we are basically testing out with the Crowd4SDG project. So the European Union has funded us to explore new ways to innovate for the SDGs. So we have a methodology called the GEAR cycle, and GEAR stands for gather, evaluate, accelerate, and refine. The gather phase is what you've just been through to get here today. That was a process where you pitched projects on Goodwall, and we selected the ones we thought that were most promising. Out of about 100 applicants, we've selected around 50 to go further here in the Open 17 Challenge. The next step is the Open 17 Challenge itself, what you're part of now. This will run for 5 weeks. We will later today, we'll start the formation of teams. Now, some of you already have teams, but many of you don't. So we'll be helping you to form teams, and those teams will be working through October and November, the next 5 weeks, to come up with a really compelling pitch for your projects. The very best teams, or at least the most promising ones in terms that we think can go further, they will be selected for a next phase, which is called the CBI workshop. CBI stands for Challenge-Based Innovation. This is organized by our partners, CERN, a very famous physics laboratory here in Geneva. And those teams will get a much more intensive prototyping workshop, also online, running for 10 times 4 hours, but over a longer period between December and February. And the very best teams, the ones that we think really have a chance, like DIA, to go further and get into some incubator or startup factory, we will be inviting them to join an event called the Geneva Trialogue. Now, if the situation, the global situation allows us, we'd like to invite those two teams to Geneva, or at least representatives of those teams. But if it's not possible because of travel restrictions, at least we'll be able to have you enjoy this event online. So that will be in March of next year. So as you see here, you've embarked on what could be a quite long journey, but we hope that it will be a very enriching one for each and every one of you. Now, I'm just going to say a few words here about the challenges themselves. Those of you who went and read the blog post on Goodwall will know that actually we specified different specific challenges that we wanted you to consider. They're listed here, and each one of them, I'm just going to read them out in a second. Each one of them is the result of working with the United Nations, specifically the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. They organized a very big workshop with other UN agencies and national statistical offices. And those national statistical offices are often the organizations that really need more open data about the SDGs. And so the questions we've been asking them is, what would be the most useful types of data to gather about issues related to climate change and gender equality. So each one of these challenges has behind it the opinions of United Nations agencies or national statistical offices. So the first one is measuring differentiated impacts of disasters on women and men. When there is a climate disaster, like a flood or a forest fire, often the impact is worse for women than men. It may depend on what part of the world we're talking about, or many other factors, but at the moment, there's not much data about this, not much information. So there's a lot of interest to gather more. Assessing women's vulnerability to climate change effects on natural resources. So often women spend a lot of time helping with agricultural tasks, farming tasks, and the natural resources they depend on can be really affected by drought or flooding in a very severe way. So often their livelihood is particularly impacted. Again, gathering data about this will be very useful, whether it's at a very local level or a regional level, in a city, in the countryside. Now there's a challenge on improving data on women's participation in environmental management. So there are many initiatives and foundations, some of you represent some of those, that are helping to manage the situation around biodiversity, around, for example, planting trees. And so more data is needed about how women are participating in these efforts. The fourth challenge is about measuring the health of ecosystems in a systemic way with women's contribution. So here we could think of, for example, mangroves, very delicate ecosystems in coastal regions that are being damaged by climate change, and that women depend on for their livelihood. So again, this is a major challenge. So these four challenges are what we'd like you to somehow think about as you work on improving your particular project idea, so that you somehow can contribute to the sort of data that we need to gather on these topics. Finally, we do have an open category, an open challenge. If you happen to have a great idea, but it doesn't fit any of the above four, but it does actually deal with climate resilience and gender equality, of course, we'd be interested to help you with that. So briefly, you're going to learn about some tools, crowdsourcing tools and collaboration tools today and in the future at each session. And these are the tools, the first four tools we'd like you to consider to use them in your projects, because really these are very useful general purpose tools that can produce open data for your projects. I'll just briefly list them here. They're all about crowdsourced data. CS Project Builder is for classifying crowdsourced data, CS Logger for gathering crowdsourced data. One called Decidim for CS is about deliberating about projects for crowdsourced data, so discussing them. And Visual Sit is a tool for filtering data from social media for crowdsourcing. And then you'll hear also about two collaboration tools that we want you to use so that you can work effectively in teams to develop your projects. One is called Slack. I think many people have heard of that. It's quite famous. One is developed from a project here in Geneva. It's called In Progress. And that second one allows you in particular to document your projects carefully. So here's one example of crowdsourced analysis of AI filtered social media data. So this is a tool called Citizen Science Project Builder, and you'll hear about it next week. It's also a tool that's being developed by partners in the Crowd4SDG project. And it allows you, for example, here to create a very simple survey to analyze data coming from tweets from social media about people, in this case, people wearing masks. So this kind of tool is the sort of tool that we'd like you to learn about to support your project. So you're going to spend 5 weeks with us, 2 hours a week, and then a little bit of time on homework each week, we hope. And I hope that this will be a learning experience in many ways. Part of the learning is more formal. We'll be talking to you today about problem definition. We think this is crucial. Very often people talk about solutions, but they haven't thought carefully about what the problem really is. Then we'll be talking next week about the theory of change. This is a way of looking at a problem where you identify very clearly exactly how your solution to the problem is actually going to make the change you want to see, right? And this, again, is something we find very useful, and often if you rush towards a solution without thinking about this, you may not have a big impact. In the third week, we'll talk about value proposition and persona. That's the means by persona, we mean the sort of people like clients or users. Who are they? Who is going to participate in your project? Why are they going to do that? These are very important questions, and they relate to fundamentally the value that your project produces for those people. And finally, in the fourth week, we'll concentrate on how to make a really good pitch, because in the last week, each team will pitch to a jury of external experts, and that will be part of how we evaluate you. So the evaluation, and by the way, we'll be sharing these slides and we'll be talking to you about this every week, so don't worry if you forget one point or other, we'll keep reminding you. But the evaluation is, first of all, based on your weekly participation. You have to participate 70% of the time, and if you're absent, please let us know. It will depend on a pitching video that you will produce at the end of the 5 weeks, a one-page summary, a one-pager, and then the documentation you do throughout the project of your project's development. The final jury will look at 4 criteria, just like we looked at when you pitched on Goodwall. novelty, relevance, feasibility, and the crowdsourcing component of your project. So what are the rewards? Why would you want to do this? Well, we hope that above all, you will want to do it because of what you'll be able to learn and how you'll be able to move your project forward towards actually having impact on the world. I can say that some of the people who joined us last year said that perhaps the most surprising thing about participating in the Open 17 Challenge is they understood that we really wanted to make a difference. We don't just want to do some academic exercise. We want you to go out and change the world, and we're here to help you do that. But besides that, there will be a certificate of participation from the United Nations, from UNITAR, the UN Institute for Training and Research. There will be this opportunity to progress to the next level, which is the CBI workshop. And there will be some other opportunities to support projects we think are promising through something called the SDG Accelerator. We'll talk about that later. So I'm going to wrap up for this introduction now. And there's probably maybe 1 or 2 minutes for a question or two. But I think the main message is, please remember to have fun. The point about the Open 17 Challenge is you're going to be meeting new people, learning new things, and this is always much easier if you approach it in the spirit of fun and enjoying yourself and learning about new things in a positive way. So it's not about hard competition. It's about helping each other move forward and change the world. Thank you.